Hello, you're tuned into Resilience Radio, Episode 8 with Edward Kentish on Acupuncture and HeartMath. My name is Irvin Eisenberg. I'm the show host and owner of Resilience OT. Realize that there's a lot of different people out there, and everyone's got their own health concerns and their own health background and belief systems, and not every episode and every guest is going to resonate with every person. So the opinions on this show are not necessarily shared by me, but I do think they're worth listening to. Additionally, this is not meant to be prescriptive or diagnostic in any way, so please seek out your own healthcare practitioner before making any health decisions. So my guest today is Edward Kentish. He's an acupuncturist and HeartMath practitioner. Good to have you on today, Edward.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So could you tell me a little bit about your background?
Sure. I grew up in England, and sometimes some listeners will catch there's a little bit of an English accent that sometimes creeps out. But I came to Vermont in 1976 when I was 21, and basically lived here ever since, except a few years when I was in Maryland going to acupuncture school. And I'm married, have 3 children, 6 grandchildren, and 1976 was also the year that I discovered Chinese medicine and began using it in my life. So it's been sort of part of my way of living since 1976, since I was 21.
So what happened in 1976 that opened you up to this?
Well, it actually was initiated by a gift from my brother and his girlfriend of an amazing cookbook from a natural food store in Brighton, England, called Nature's Foods, which it did not say that it was part Oriental medicine, but I learned later that was actually the philosophy that was behind this book. And one thing led to another, and I kept sort of making further connections and eventually started taking classes. What initiated that was actually for a year beforehand, I'd been traveling, headed for Australia, but didn't get to Australia, but I was in India bumming around for a number of months. And quite honestly, I was actually in need of a reset. I was in need of some support. And Chinese medicine actually really helped me get myself back together again. I found it to be powerful.
What about it appealed to you?
Well, it's absolutely beautiful. The philosophy is beautiful. That was my entry point. It made so much sense. The partnership with nature. It's a very nature-based philosophy. A lot of it derives from the observation of nature, the natural cycles and rhythms in nature. And somewhere I resonated with it. It made sense. I connected with it, and it's been a sort of foundation to my thinking and how I eat and how I make decisions ever since.
So earlier in this season, I did an interview with Josh Singer, who is an acupuncturist, and he described how sort of acupuncture is a generic term that tends to mean, in the United States, that tends to mean acupuncture and all the other things that are under the umbrella of Chinese medicine. Would you say that you're a Chinese medicine practitioner more than an acupuncturist?
Interesting question. So I went to acupuncture school in 1996. So that's about 25 years that I was exploring Chinese medicine through food, what we used to call Oriental body work, like shiatsu, Jinshindo, body-mind acupressure, as well as like martial arts, Aikido, they're all using the same language, the same principles. And so I was, yes, very much practicing in both my own life and professionally for 25 years before I went to acupuncture school. And at that point, though, I added, yes, I'm now an acupuncturist. So it's both. And in my professional work as an acupuncturist, totally I'm drawing from the full spectrum of what I've learned over the years, not just an acupuncture training.
And a lot of American acupuncture is traditional Chinese medicine, which is sort of, I think of as sort of post-communist and post-communist Chinese medicine. Could you speak a little bit to the difference between what you do and traditional Chinese medicine?
Sure. So I went to what was at the time called the Traditional Acupuncture Institute in Maryland, where the curriculum is 5-element acupuncture as introduced by Professor Worsley from England. And I think today, really, the two are converging. They're coming closer together. But back in maybe the 60s and the 70s, yes, TCM was a product of communist China. It was very much geared towards physical needs of the Chinese, who Chairman Mao realized really had no form of healthcare. And so they pulled Chinese medicine back out of the closet. It wasn't really in popular use. Western medicine had been gaining a foothold. So they brought it back out of the closet and trained what they called the barefoot doctors, who were trained in tending the physical body. And communism did not really tend to personal aspirations, personal needs of the spirit. 5-element acupuncture, on the other hand, was totally about the spirit. It's very much based in the emotions and the spirit. And what's interesting is my training did not teach me at all how to treat an illness. I was never taught how to treat whatever, diabetes or congestive heart failure or whatever else. I was taught to ask, rather than what kind of illness does this person have, the question is, what kind of person has this illness? So I was trained to assess the person at a constitutional level and then treat according to that. And it's quite extraordinary how one of the side effects is the symptoms will in time start to change, because we're supporting the person in being, helping them come back to their authentic native state, which is powerful and effortless.
Could you speak a little more to sort of the difference between an authentic state and one's constitution?
By the authentic state, I mean being natural, not we very easily get caught up in straining and striving to be something other than who we are, which could also be called stressful. And the constitution, I think of and understand as a native gift that we're born with. In 5-element acupuncture, we think of it as our gift, our greatest strength, but also kind of a weakness where we get thrown off. So there is an overlap between constitution and authenticity. When we're in touch with our constitutional nature, we're going to be more authentic. As we lose touch, we're going to be striving, we get lost. Or trying to find our way, trying to find our place, trying to be something other than our native place of strength.
I have a little bit I consider like the very fundamentals of 5-element theory, because New York State required shiatsu training as part of their as part of the massage school training. So when I started
Right.
on my path, so I know the basic control and creation cycle, or grandmother, grandfather, grandmother, child versus parent cycles.
Yes.
But
Yes.
but the constitutions of the 5 elements have fascinated me, and I've thought about the idea of, often when we look at sort of archetypes, there's a tendency to either sort of glorify them or pathologize them. And
Hmm.
so and the idea of finding balance being like, well, if someone tends towards a particular type of constitution, how much should you embrace that versus how much should you be trying to balance that out, is something that's interested me for a while.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So with 5-element acupuncture, we're looking at those 5 elements, fire, earth, metal, water, and wood, as being present in all of us. And the quality of energy moving in each of us. And there will tend to be one which is not moving well. It's not doing very well. And that will tend to be the place where, if we treat it, you help somebody come back to that place, it moves fully, and gosh, something comes alive. They come back to their natural state. Their gifts will start to be much more apparent. So that's with 5-element acupuncture. That's what we look for.
So I know more recently that you've become a HeartMath practitioner, and I don't know really much about HeartMath at all, but wanted to have you introduce that and its relationship to the work you already do.
Yes. So HeartMath was something that I came across in my own search for how do I tend myself. And it was around 2005. I figured out that strange symptoms in my world were actually an autoimmune condition. And I had to start figuring out, what is an autoimmune condition? How do I resolve this? What do I do about it? Because back then, the internet did not have the information that it has now. Very different. So I had to start figuring it out. And one of the things I stumbled on was HeartMath, because I understood that it was the stress disease connection that I was working with. And HeartMath just somewhere resonated. So I bought their little gizmo, the biofeedback device called the emWave, and started using it. And it made a difference in my world. It absolutely helped me transform. So over the years, I loved it. I started taking some classes with HeartMath to learn more. And then last year, when we were all back at home, had a little bit more time on our hands, I said, time to finish up this certification process with HeartMath and become a certified practitioner, because I would love to share this with patients. I have, over the years, introduced little bits of HeartMath to patients because I'm always putting out, here's little things that you could be adding that would help you in your healing. And for a number of people, I taught them a little bit of HeartMath. But what I learned was, I either need to be doing HeartMath or acupuncture. I can't be doing both. And I also learned that the emWave actually makes a huge difference. It doesn't do anything to you, but it gives you feedback. It lets you see change happening. And that really makes a difference for people. And so I started looking at, hey, I'd really enjoy offering this as quite frankly, it's less expensive than acupuncture. And it takes less to sort of get involved and do it. And of course, yet last year, turns out, actually, this is perfect because acupuncture is a bit more sort of close contact, whereas HeartMath coaching, it's great if we can meet in person, at least once, but we don't have to. We can do it over the telephone or we can do it over a Zoom conference. And so, given current circumstances in the world, gosh, HeartMath actually is kind of a good fit for current circumstances. It addresses typically stress, anxiety, overwhelm, negative emotional states in general, which are found to be quite draining. There is this, we're becoming more and more aware that stress is an underlying component to basically all disease. So negative emotional states tend to leave us in the acute moment kind of wiped out, or if it's just running very slowly in the background, it's a very slow drain.
So what does HeartMath offer that acupuncture doesn't?
Part of it is the accessibility, the ease of, there's a bigger commitment to doing a series of acupuncture treatments, becoming an acupuncture patient. It's liable to be a sort of a deeper process. What HeartMath offers is, this is quicker access. It's putting tools in your hands that you can use for transformation. It's got a huge amount of overlap with acupuncture treatments. But one of the key aspects to this is that you're doing it for yourself. Acupuncture it's somewhat participatory, yes. HeartMath is totally participatory. It's not doing anything to you. You go home and you do the homework regularly, and that's where change happens. It's because you show up at least a couple times a day and do your practice. So it's very much for somebody who is able to be self-motivated, proactive, and recognizes that, oh, if I don't like the channel that I'm watching, I can change the channel. And it goes from there.
So I feel like you've talked about the benefits of HeartMath. I'm a little bit unclear what it is exactly still. So it's this biofeedback machine that uses emWaves. And what is that?
I don't know how they arrived at the name HeartMath. I don't know how they arrived at the name emWave. But the emWave is a little device that clips to your ear and picks up electric signals from the heart. And among the information that it will give you is a wave. It's a sine wave that's rising and falling, rising and falling. And that is sort of a monitoring of your heart's activity. If we create what's known as heart coherence, the quality of that wave becomes much more regular, smooth. You can see, oh, something's obviously in better condition than when it is jagged, angular, sharp, erratic. And if it's probably fairly easy to find on the HeartMath website, this little image of here's a person experiencing frustration, here's a person experiencing gratitude. The waves are completely different. And so that's kind of the goal, is to put the heart into its groove, its coherent state. And when that happens, the heart has a huge number of nerve pathways going to the brain. The brain has a few pathways going to the heart. Heart has a huge number going to the brain. The heart can regulate the brain into a different state, one that sort of matches the heart's coherent state. And what we know about the heart, if you take that and apply it to the brain, the heart tends to be all about oneness, joy, love, connection, and invite the brain to be that way, to be less fearful, disconnected, pressured, stressed, competitive. So it invites the brain to be in a different place. So it kind of creates a partnership between the heart and the brain. And there are a number of little practices that help us to achieve that state. And so that's what happens in HeartMath coaching. We hook up the emWave, and I typically do a comparison, have the client sit there and just think about their shopping list for a couple of minutes, and then introduce the first of the little simple practices, which is shifting your attention to the area of the heart, and then imagining breathing in through the heart, breathing out through the heart, and you see the wave changing. You keep doing it, it keeps changing, which is sort of teaching us that, oh, I can influence what's happening. And it kind of goes from there. You keep practicing, introduce further layers of practices, and if we keep doing it, it begins to influence all areas of our lives. It really does make a difference.
So someone who's practiced this for a while, if they go to this more gratitude or meditative, calmer state, how does that influence them when they are experiencing stress down the road? Because we.
It happens. What it does is it gives you another possibility, because the brain tends to return to what is known, familiar, what it's done before. So what we have to do is practice at a time when we're at greater ease. So it's about practicing every day when life is a little bit more normal. And then that creates a new baseline. It creates a new possibility. It's something that the brain is willing to trust. It's willing to try. And so it's kind of like, okay, if I've done my practice enough, then this option starts to show up in, I don't know if you have a toolbox or a medicine pouch, whichever it is you're working from, it starts to show up in your medicine pouch as an option. And again, it's for people who are more proactive, willing to say, okay, I want to change channels. I want to go through this differently. You got to say, okay, there's a door I'm going to go through, or the choice of doors, I'm taking the different one this time.
So it seems like in a lot of ways it's very similar to a lot of meditative and gratitude and mindfulness practices, but one of the things that sets this apart is that you have that external or more quantifiable visual of where your heart waves are actually at that moment. So you have that feedback. Is that the main thing that sets this apart from other mindfulness practices?
It's very much got some overlap with, yes, all the things that are beautiful today, mindfulness, meditation, and yes, you've got the feedback piece, which I have seen be valuable because, it's kind of seeing is believing. Not everybody goes for having gizmos, but when somebody does relate to having a gizmo, it can make a difference. It's got this, it's interesting, it's got one foot in science. It is very measurable, it's very demonstratable, and it's got another foot in like HeartMath.org, which is a nonprofit organization, has things like the Global Coherence Initiative, which brings together people who are practicing with the intention to bring heart coherence to an area of the world at a certain time, certain place. It's very, should we say, out there. It's whatever we want to call it. They're out there in the more sort of meditation, foo-foo sort of realms, as well as being very scientific based.
So is the biofeedback thing, it's this small thing that you clip to your ear, is this a fairly inexpensive thing that anyone can get, or they have to
Yes.
only use? Okay.
There are different versions. There's a version that hooks to your computer, which has a little bit more information available in it. Then there's the smaller version that clips to your tablet or your iPhone or Android device, which makes it totally mobile. And so it's very compact, very easy. That's about $150 plus or minus. The other one, desktop one, is more expensive. So it's accessible. When you consider that, if I'm having a serious issue with anxiety, panic attacks, stress, if I'm in that situation, what are my options? I could sign up with a therapist, which is going to be a lengthy process and could be expensive, or I can take medications. HeartMath is giving you an option that's actually, if you can do the work, it's relatively inexpensive. Half a dozen sessions with Edward and the cost of an emWave. It's relatively inexpensive, and the beauty of it is it's not just doing away with your anxiety, it's actually opening doors to something much more positive, uplifting. Because at the end of the day, what HeartMath is really about is cultivating positive emotional states. It's not trying to do away with anything. It's just building a fresh habit of experiencing gratitude or joy or love. It sounds way too simple to be true, to be realistic. But at the end of the day, that's what it is. The emWave is simply measuring, well, look what your heart waves look like when you're in a positive state. And your body can get to appreciate, oh, I kind of like this. This feels good. It's slightly idiot at one level. It's so simple, but it's not in the least bit obvious to us that this is what we need to do, or that it's available to us. So the biofeedback device is kind of helpful in just do it, make it happen, and then notice what happens.
So could somebody, not to discourage them to go to you for this by any means, but could somebody simply buy their own HeartMath and go off on their own journey and not seek you out? Or what's the main benefit of seeing a HeartMath practitioner?
Lovely question. Yeah. That's exactly what I did. I bought the emWave and searched out information, sort of taught myself, made a difference. Absolutely, it's available. There's HeartMath primarily sells to private individuals doing it on their own. Yes. And benefits to working with Edward is I can give you a huge amount of insight into what's happening, how to do it. I have sort of a depth of training that ultimately has 15 years to it at this point, from my own experience, plus taking classes with HeartMath. I can bring a richness to it, and I can walk with you as you do it. One of the there's a lot of sort of sticks and carrots to this. One of the benefits is when we set it up, the practice sessions are recorded, can be recorded in the Heart Cloud, which is an internet-based sort of repository where all your files are saved. And if you give me the special password, I can review your practice sessions before next time we meet. Which means if you're committed to this, you're going to be showing up to your practice sessions and doing it. Otherwise, because you know that Edward's watching, which creates a little bit of
the Heart Cloud.
Right. I'm watching for the Heart Cloud. I'm watching you do it. So, if we're in a partnership doing this together, it provides a little motivation to actually do it, because it's sort of like, that saying, minds are like parachutes. They only work when they're open. Or vitamins only work when you take them. You have to actually use it. You have to do it.
Yeah, having all of the tools and practices available to you don't mean much if you don't use them, and the accountability of having someone
That's
there.
right. Accountability, that's the word to it. Yes.
So thinking about the heart and thinking about how the heart is, in Chinese medicine at least, is related to fire and the fire element and such. Where does the idea of the heart within Chinese medicine fit into HeartMath, and where is it not a perfect fit? Because I know these really are different systems.
Yeah. So HeartMath is, as I said, they got a foot in two worlds. Part of it is the physical heart that we're working with. The other is, yes, the energetic heart, which has these beautiful qualities that we would love to have showing up in our lives. It's the energetic heart that is about oneness and connection and love and joy and the good things. In Chinese medicine, we often look at the heart as the emperor, who is kind of the supreme being, and the other, we sometimes call them officials, the other organs, the liver and spleen and kidneys, are like sort of cabinet officials, with the heart being the sort of supreme controller, supreme ruler, the emperor. When the emperor is suitably situated on throne, performing the appropriate rituals, everything proceeds smoothly in the empire. When the emperor has been sort of overthrown or is not performing his rituals properly, or if things aren't right with the emperor, things start going to pieces throughout the empire. That was sort of a principle of ancient China. And that's similar in Chinese medicine, that the heart needs to be in its groove, on its throne, in its appropriate state. And when it's there, it will regulate all of the other officials, all of the other organs, to be doing their job properly. What tends to happen, though, is chaos, for one reason or another, has taken over. One of the other officials starts overworking, doing too much, trying to be in charge. There's sort of a little breakdown in the order. So putting the heart back in place is often a very basic piece in 5-element acupuncture, restoring the heart to its place, because then everything can start to flow properly. And so it's similar with HeartMath. There's an overlap there, that when you put the heart into its coherent state, it starts communicating to the whole body a different quality, a different message. and oh gosh, we shift into a different state. So there's huge overlap. If there is difference, I don't know if there is really a big difference. We just have to sort of be aware that there's the physical heart with its sort of correspondences, and then there's the energetic heart. And if we don't try to mix those up in our speaking, then I think really HeartMath and 5-element acupuncture really overlap significantly.
It sounds like they may overlap better than our Western view of the heart versus Chinese medicine, or even our or the
Yeah,
Western view of the heart versus HeartMath. It sounds like the HeartMath is is a closer pair with the Chinese
yeah,
medicine heart, from what you're saying.
yes. And you're reminding me there of a basic part of HeartMath that I think is worth sharing. And that is the other aspect of the wave that shows up on the emWave. The amplitude, the height, the wave goes up and then goes down, is a measure of heart rate, beats per minute. Because the heart actually doesn't have a steady beat. From beat to beat, it's actually changing. And it's about 6 times a minute. It gently speeds up a little bit, slows down again, speeds up, slows down. And that's known as heart rate variability, which is a recognized scientific phenomena. It's not just a HeartMath thing. What heart rate variability is indicating is it's very much connected with the speeding up is a very slight sympathetic nervous system dominance, which then shifts to a slight parasympathetic dominance, which then goes back to sympathetic dominance. Like constantly, several times a minute, there's a little alternating, which is, I should say, the greater the heart rate variability, the better. You want a larger swing because that is giving you the incredible resilience of the ability to respond appropriately, to either be in a sympathetic state and respond to circumstances, and then go back to parasympathetic and relax and rest and digest and have spaciousness. And again, if there's another, I can get, it's the ability to have both options. And so heart rate variability is a really amazing insight when you see that wave, because science tells us that as heart rate variability decreases, all causes of mortality increase. There is a connection scientifically. So HeartMath practices can, in time, and I've seen it in my own world, my own life, can help heart rate variability increase, which is an increase in that ability to respond appropriately. Jump up and defend myself, sit down and relax and chill. In our world today, we're sort of losing that flexibility, the ability to let go of the sympathetic nervous system state and chill a little bit. That's kind of the big thing with stress, is we're getting stuck in one and not so able to get back to the other.
So it's sort of okay to experience, and it's the natural nature of things that we're going to experience stress. It's our ability to come back down from it that builds resilience.
We've got this incredible equipment in our brain that is, there's a reason that we're so good at surviving. We've got equipment, these incredible fast brain waves called beta waves that, they get us out of trouble. we can survive. We're really good at it. And situations will come up where we need to. We just need to be able to unwind as well and chill. And that's what we're all looking for, is how do I get back there? How do I get back down the other end of the hallway to the slow brain waves that are associated with the parasympathetic state? The spaciousness, the chill, the ease, the repair and nourishment and renewing, and that whole world. That's what's been sort of eluding us somewhat.
I'm reminded of the first time that I had a class. It was at massage school about sympathetic and parasympathetic, and they were talking about the mechanism in which sympathetic fires like all the nerves together, that it sort of gets everything on board. And someone was asking, well, why does that happen so quickly when the parasympathetic, the rest and digest, doesn't happen as quickly? And they're relating it to sort of the classic sort of the saber-toothed tiger comes by and you need to be able to jump to action, and that's a very adaptive trait that would evolve and be a useful thing, whereas they're saying it's not as immediately adaptive to be able to chill real quickly. And in a way, in the acute circumstance, that's it's not like being able to relax real quickly is imperative, but it really seems that for long-term stress management and versatility is very useful to be able to bring yourself down.
Yeah, we need to sort of, is that what we call reverse engineering? Or engineer in the other direction is build our ability to, yes, go the other direction. Retain our ability to have a choice.
So, of course, I'm very interested. My ears perk up anytime people use the word resilience, because it gets used in a lot of different ways. And with the show called Resilience Radio and my practice being Resilience OT, of course, interests me.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I was on a walk with my wife trying to figure out what would be a good name to name my business. And I said, I'd like something that describes dynamic equilibrium, but isn't like a pretentious mouthful. And she helped me come to the word resilience.
Well, that's great.
So I guess what is within HeartMath, and then more generally, what does resilience mean to you?
I think of resilience as the ability to bounce back, the ability to be compressed and then return to my original shape. So that would translate to the ability to experience life's circumstances, to roll with them, be squeezed, be compressed, be challenged, be whatever it brings, and then to return to my native state, return to my natural shape. So I think of it as, this ability to return always. Chinese medicine speaks of the Tao as we learn about the Tao by losing it. We constantly fall away from the path so that we can come back. We keep losing it so that we can re-find it. And that's how we learn it. And so I think of resilience as having that ability to keep coming back to the sort of authentic state after there's an experience. So we can withstand the experiences because we can always come back, reconnect to the spaciousness, reconnect to source, which is, I think, how we survive, is because we can reconnect. Which makes me think of animals. some animals, after a shock, after a dangerous incident, they don't completely let down until they're back in the pack or in the herd or in the larger group. Once they're back in the larger group, they can let it down. They can go back to their native relaxed state. But they have to be connected first. So that would be my take on resilience.
I've heard described the way a deer sort of ruffles its flank when it's been stressed and it's sort of going back to that parasympathetic. And I've sort of, well, two things come to mind. One is that I really wish that we had the ability to just ruffle our flank and go back to into our parasympathetic state, that we had a physical means like that was so obvious.
Right.
And the other was the idea, you being a Chinese medicine practitioner, the wood element, the gallbladder coming down the side, which is, I'm guessing, would correspond to the flank, part of the flank that's being ruffled in that case. How do you see? What do you see in that beginning of an observation I have? I'd be curious to run that by you.
By ruffling the flank, I think of the practice that we use a lot in Qigong, of just shaking, which is what animals sometimes do, is shake to do that nervous system reset. And it's not coming to me right off how that translates with Chinese medicine.
Well, it may be me trying to force something in that's not quite relating.
It's awkward sometimes to. There are different domains in which we speak, and I can't always jump one to another.
This does bring me to questions about Qigong. I'm actually surprised, one of the last conversations me and you have had together, I remember you saying something to the effect, after we had talked about Chinese medicine and acupuncture for a little bit, I asked you about your Qigong classes that you teach, and I think your words were, Qigong is where it's at. You sort of, you presented it as acupuncture pays the bills and is what most people know me for, but you felt like, I think for a similar reason as I'm hearing you describe for HeartMath, because the personal accountability people have to take in it, that you felt like Qigong was where the real healing and practice was. And I'm curious.
Interesting you remember that. That's me, yeah. I am, that's my nature, it's my bent. I tend to be sort of a do-it-yourselfer. Yeah. And so Qigong absolutely is where we have accountability, we participate, rather than having something done to us. And so, yeah, I have often called it Chinese medicine in motion. It's, we're using the same principles of Chinese medicine, working with Qi, and it's sort of about embodying it. It's a way to, I sometimes call it, it's sort of like reading the owner's manual. It's getting to know our physical and energetic bodies better, so that we can have a better sort of connection and understanding and be a better partner to ourselves in a way. As well as heightening awareness of our surroundings, which is sort of a fundamental in a way of Chinese medicine. Is it's all about restoring harmony, restoring appropriate relationships, and one of the absolute basic ones there is harmony with nature, being able to move with the changing seasons, being in harmony with my local surroundings. And Qigong is a beautiful practice in that regard, of cultivating awareness internally and externally. And yes, it's absolutely about being my own practitioner.
So you practice this ancient Chinese medicine, and which is developed on the other side of the world from where you grew up and from where you live now. How do you, in what ways do you feel like the teachings of Chinese medicine in the culture? I was thinking back to the emperor model, and the how I could see some people bristling at the idea of the emperor and the court in that particular metaphor because it doesn't fit our culture's idea of what governance should look like. And it made me wonder about
yeah, sure.
And in what other ways, or how have you reconciled the fact that you're not a Chinese medicine practitioner in China or Japan, but you're here in Vermont and grew up in England?
Yeah, that's, is it cultural? Or is it just the observation of human beings in harmony or out of harmony with nature? That's sort of a basic component. And yes, sometimes there are, we can come up with problems, yes, with ancient Chinese culture was not always what we would hope for human beings. And so sometimes the analogies can be, not ideal. This is true. Sometimes, they're relative to history at that time in China. It's different now, but largely human beings are pretty similar in our energetic anatomy and our physical anatomy. But yes, things do change. A lot of the imagery of Chinese medicine can be around, getting fed, needing food. But today, people have homes, people have food. The issues are different. The issues are more sort of a starvation of the spirit, starvation emotionally, rather than starvation physically. Those basics have been taken care of pretty much in a way that they weren't necessarily a couple thousand years ago. So things do change, but I find that the basic philosophy is totally relevant. Using Tao, oneness, and yin yang, the sort of basic distinctions, and viewing life as much as possible as energy rather than physical. That just shifts everything. If we limit ourselves to the sort of scientific perspective of only things that are tangible and measurable exist, we're ruling out whole huge realms that in some form do exist. We exist as energetic beings more than we exist as physical beings, which is, yes, we'll bristle at that one. Absolutely, it's difficult to demonstrate that I don't exist. It's a grim reality that I am in this physical body. Yes, there's no way around it. But science is telling us more and more that there's a whole lot more space in me than there is particles. There's not many particles, and those particles are even flipping back and forth between being a wave and a particle. And that's the Chinese medicine, ancient Chinese medicine perspective, was we're energetic beings. more than we're physical beings. So in that respect, it translates for me wherever I live. Just trying to view things in that perspective, yin yang and qi, and oneness.
So I didn't know if you had any closing thoughts you wanted to leave listeners with, be that advice or just any thoughts you'd like to finish us off with.
Sure. I think given today's circumstances with what's happening for people, January 2021, these days, as I said earlier, let's celebrate the gifts that our brain has in survival, and remember that down at the other end of the hallway, there are these doorways to spaciousness, to a completely different state, and we can choose to go there. We just have to remember how to do it. Have to remember how to get there. And the basic HeartMath practice is called heart-focused breathing, which is simply to bring your attention to the area of the heart, to the center of the chest, and then practice breathing in through the heart, breathing out through the heart, breathing in through the heart, breathing out through the heart, and we can keep practicing. That's one way. It's one quick and easy way to make a first step towards re-experiencing that spaciousness where we feel supported and we can feel loved. It's always available to us. We just have to remember how to get there. That would be my little offering to. It's always available.
Oh, what a lovely ending.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate your time and your perspectives.
Sure. Good to talk with you. Thank you for your questions, your thoughtfulness.
That was Edward Kentish, and this is Resilience Radio. I hope you enjoyed this interview. If you did, it would really help out if you could share it with a friend and leave a 5-star review on the podcatcher of your choice. You've been listening to Resilience Radio. Take care.